So here's a 49ers 53-man roster analysis. Just a couple days after the 49ers finalized their 53-man roster and included Brandon Aiyuk on it, but he was an inefficient part of that roster because he was holding in. Now the hold-in is over because Brandon Aiyuk has signed for 4 years, $120 million with $76 million in total guarantees. Now we need to know the fully guaranteed money before we can actually judge who won this deal. It does appear on the surface to be a win-win based on some of the clues that we've gotten. But the biggest win comes from the 49ers 53-man roster. That's the salary cap impact for San Francisco. I'll replace it now with the 53-man roster look, which I'll zoom in on. But first, we want to look at the big picture. The big picture, Brandon Aiyuk is no longer shaded in blue, the darker blue. That signified the hold-in. We could zoom in on that receiver position, and we could see that that receiver room is looking very, very strong for the 49ers, especially if Ricky Pearsall can sustain good health. He's back at practice now wearing the blue non-contact jersey. But since we're talking about Brandon Aiyuk, we will start with the receiver room. And we can talk about the sheer efficiency of this. Brandon Aiyuk is one of the best X receivers in the game. If you don't believe me, look at this. Brandon Aiyuk is in the top right. Further to the right, further up, he is an outlier. Guess who else the 49ers have? You want to be top right here, or you at least want to be very extremely high up the Y-axis or very extremely to the right off the X-axis? Well, they have Brandon Aiyuk as an outlier. They've got Deebo Samuel as an outlier because of his yak producing ability. Both of those receivers are superstars in their own right, and both of those receivers lead the 49ers room on the 53-man roster. They re-signed Jauan Jennings this offseason. He's one of the best blocking receivers in football, runs great routes, he separates, just a dependable guy, a guy that you want on your team and you hate playing against. So Jauan Jennings is part of that roster as well. Chris Conley is Brandon Aiyuk's direct backup. So we no longer have to talk about Chris Conley having to start games, but we can talk about Chris Conley delivering as a gunner. He's one of the best gunners in the NFL last season, especially in the playoffs. Had a hell of a Super Bowl for San Francisco. Ricky Pearsall is icing on the cake for this 49ers receiving room. So is somebody like Jacob Cowing, who replaces Ray McCloud and is probably going to be the starting punt returner. But when it comes to offensive impact, Ray McCloud was a gadget weapon. I think Jacob Cowing could be something a little bit more than that because he's got a thicker frame. But if you add Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing onto this trio, I think the 49ers are already looking at a better receiving room than the one that they had last season. And the receiving room they had last season was good enough to spearhead the number one offense in NFL. It's important to remember that Brock Purdy, as an elite quarterback, is somebody that can make the receiving room better. He made him very good last year. He can make him even better this year. And the receiving room, it's a symbiotic relationship, can also make Brock Purdy better. You've got a speed threat like Cowing, and then you just have extra stacked insurance like a Ricky Pearsall. The great news about Pearsall and the way that the 49ers can approach this is that they don't have to rush him. They have Brandon Aiyuk back fully now. They've got Deebo Samuel. They've got Jauan Jennings. They've got Jacob Cowing. They have Chris Conley. Hell, they even have an emergency guy on the 53-man roster in Ronnie Bell. They also have Terrence Marshall, Tay Martin, and Trent Taylor. A lot of people excited about Marshall. I would pump the brakes until he gets acclimated into the system. It's more about who the 49ers have on this side of the 53-man roster. That is arguably the best receiving room in football. So why don't we move on to the next part of the 49ers 53. You guys want to go straight to quarterback? Yeah, I think we should go straight to quarterback. They were very happy about what they were able to do as far as retaining all the talent in the quarterback room. It's unclear who's going to be the two at this point. Is it going to be Dobbs? Is it going to be Brandon Allen? But more importantly, at least right now, the 49ers were able to keep 4 in the building. So that's Purdy, Dobbs, Allen, and Tanner Mordecai, who they waived and they brought back to the practice squad. There were definite concerns at the start of this training camp that the 49ers quarterback room had weakened significantly behind Brock Purdy ever since last season. After all, they lost Sam Darnold, who's going to start for the Minnesota Vikings. It's tough. Sam Darnold was a really good backup, played well for the 49ers last year. So they lost Darnold because they obviously couldn't pay him $10 million. That's the money that he was awarded by Minnesota. And they said, well, we're going to re-sign Brandon Allen and we'll bring in somebody like Josh Dobbs at what, like $4 million a year? A lot less than Sam Darnold was making. And they knew that Dobbs had some upside, but they also knew that upside's not everything, that you have to learn the system, and that things might be kind of rough early on. And things were rough for Josh Dobbs early on. He's throwing high. He was missing guys over the middle of the field. I scratched my head at the start of 49ers training camp. But over time, Josh Dobbs really impressed us. He really impressed us over the course of games. He's a gamer. And Brandon Allen really impressed as well. Tanner Mordecai, enough to stay on the practice squad. The bottom line is that stockpiling quarterbacks is always a good idea. So as we go through the roster, 49ers got what they needed to do done at the cut down with the quarterback position. Then we move to the running back room. I think that by next Tuesday, we'll be taking Christian McCaffrey off of this injury report. He's been working back from the strained calf muscle over the course of the past several weeks, but he's the highest paid running back in the game. He's still the best running back in the game, and he's at the top of the 49ers room. Jordan Mason is now officially the 49ers running back 2. Elijah Mitchell done for the season, had to undergo hamstring surgery. And they've got a nice little insurance piece in Patrick Taylor Jr., who was with the Packers last year. Patrick Taylor, if you look at Patrick Taylor run, we saw him against Vegas. Guy runs really, really hard. But what I like most about him is that he's a great pass protector. And just that value alone as a running back, as long as they can be a replacement level runner, the pass protection alone, especially in front of a big quarterback investment like Brock Purdy, is very, very important. Taylor gives the 49ers a little bit of a floor in case Isaac Guerendo continues to fight through some of these muscle injuries. First, it was the hamstring. Now a little bit of a groin tweak for Isaac Guerendo. He's going to have to find a way to work through conditioning to keep himself available at the NFL level. But as long as he is available, I think Isaac Guerendo might be your option at kick returner. So far, the longest kick return that we've seen, I know it was just the preseason, but across the entire NFL came from Isaac Guerendo on the 93-yarder against the Raiders, week 3 of that preseason. Then there's Keyshawn Vaughn, who the 49ers added today, back to the practice squad. He was with them during training camp. They needed a little bit more insulation after Cody Schrader got picked off of waivers by the Rams. I've given you Aiyuk and the receiving room. I would say, the 49ers have one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Brock Purdy. That's great. They probably have one of the best quarterback rooms in the league. I think they might have the best quarterback room in the league between Purdy, Dobbs, and Brandon Allen. That's a damn good quarterback room. They've got the best running backs room in the league because any room with Christian McCaffrey and decent depth, and I think that Jordan Mason is definitely decent depth. That qualifies as number 1. McCaffrey is that transcendent of a player. And I think they arguably have the best receiving room in the league with Aiyuk and Samuel and Jennings and Pearsall and Cowing and Conley. I mean, Conley is a heck of a backup X. So the first 3 units of this 49ers offense are loaded. And, the data supports everything that I'm saying. They were the number 1 offense in all football last year. All the efficiency metrics love the 49ers offense. The skill positions especially. George Kittle, he's at a skill position at tight end. He's the best in the game, especially if you combine the blocking. They really like Eric Saubert. They hope they're going to get a little bit more out of tight end too, receiving-wise this year. They're able to keep Mason Pline and Braden Willis on the practice squad. They've got Jake Tonjes now making the 53-man roster. It's a great example of a player who's subscribed to the system, developed, and earned himself a spot. So these 4 position groups, money for the 49ers. Somebody earlier on said, okay, what do they still need to work on? Well, the work isn't done here along the offensive line. These are some sobering statistics. The 49ers offensive line is ranked number 20 or worse in pass block win rate in each of the past, well, not yet. I'll put it this way. In 5 of the 7 years under Kyle Shanahan. They had 2 decent years pass blocking in 2021 and 2022. But it regressed again last season. 49ers need to be better in pass protection. Right now, they're still missing Trent Williams. So as much as we can talk about the impact of Brandon Aiyuk re-signing, the big left tackle is MIA on the left side. Maybe the terms of the Brandon Aiyuk deal helped the 49ers finish the structure of the Trent Williams deal. But at this point, we just can't be sure. So Jalen Moore is in line to be the 49ers starting left tackle. And he's a swing tackle. He's a backup left tackle in terms of skill. That's a problem. Aaron Banks is coming back from a broken pinky. I talked to Aaron over at his locker today. He said he's going to put kind of a metal thing on his pinky when he returns to practice next Tuesday. I think that the 49ers' biggest issue is at center. Yes, even bigger than left or right tackle without Trent Williams. Why? Because the depth is really, really sketchy there. And whereas you may be able to scheme some help for the tackle positions, you can't scheme help for your center. If the snaps are bad, if the timing is off, if the anchor is too weak, you're in massive trouble at the center position. Any 49ers fan who watched the 2020 season will remember this. It got really bad. Their season was derailed in Seattle when they were on their fourth or fifth string center. And the Seahawks were just blitzing the A gap with Bobby Wagner time and time and time again. So that center position just has to have solid performance. You can hide at other spots for at least a short period of time. I don't think you'd hide at all at center. It's so important. Jake Brendel played good football 2 years ago. I think he regressed last year, and I'm interested to see what he brings to the table this season. I've seen some low snaps over the course of training camp, and I know he's dealing with knee tendonitis. So what will he bring to the table? And if he falters or if his knee is bothering him and he can't play, what's behind him? A lot of inexperience is the answer. John Feliciano's on injured reserve. He started a whole season at center for the New York Giants, but he's currently not available. He might be the guy later in the year, but for now, you'd have to rely on Nick Zakelj. You'd have to rely on Ben Barch, maybe even Dominic Pooney, who snapped for Kansas in their spring game. He's played all 5 positions. So it's thin ice for the 49ers at center. I think this is the weakness in the entire roster, assuming that, Trent Williams obviously comes back after signing an extension or signing a rework deal with San Francisco. The biggest weakness of the roster last year was right guard, and they have ostensibly improved it with their draft pick, Dominic Pooney, who's slated to start at right guard. Then, of course, you got Colton McKivitz at right tackle. You have to realize, though, that McKivitz can be better, A, in his second year of starting, but also B, he can be better if Dominic Pooney, a better right guard, is next to him, because the offensive line works in cohesion, and it's critical that they work in cohesion because it's a team sport. It's not just about one guy blocking on an island. So that's a look at the 49ers offense. We can go now to the 49ers defense on this 53-man roster. The Brandon Aiyuk addition to the practice mix for the 49ers is critical because it affected the whole roster while he was out. He was taking up a 53-man roster spot without producing, which meant that they had to carry an extra receiver. If you carry an extra receiver, then you have to carry one fewer person on the defensive side of the ball, and that kind of stuff can add up on you quickly in the NFL. 53-man roster is not very big for the sport of football. So when you look at the 49ers defensive line, they carried who they wanted to on that defensive line, but they're also at the bare minimum for Chris Kaceric's rotation. He's going to run rotations of 8 men throughout a game. All 8 will probably play. So you want to have capable bodies at all of these spots. Teal means that a player was added as a free agent this offseason. There should be 4 Teal spots, if not for the injury to Yetur Gross-Matos, who's still coming back from his knee injury. But Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott on the inside, Leonard Floyd, and Gross-Matos on the inside. It's a drastically new defensive line for the 49ers. I think they need a new look defensive line because last year they were number 26 in EPA against the run. They really struggled up the middle. So what they do, they let go of Eric Armstead when he wouldn't take the pay cut. They let go of Javon Kinlaw. They let him go to the Jets. They've rehauled the interior with somebody like Malik Collins destroyed a double team against the Raiders. I thought that was extremely impressive. Jordan Elliott was number 6 in run stop win rate last year for the Cleveland Browns. I think that he could improve the 49ers presence against the run. And it all becomes something that lives up to the mantra of the defensive line. Stop the run to have some fun. If they can improve against the run, then they could unleash a pass rush that I think could be pretty damn good. Javon Hargrave is one of the best interior rushers in the game. Bosa is one of the best in the game, period. Leonard Floyd is a 10-sack guy, a consistent 10-sack cleanup guy. You need a cleanup guy on the other side of Nick Bosa. Yetur Gross-Matos, they're hoping for him to be healthy as soon as possible. He can slide inside. He can theoretically slide inside and be in that Arden Key, Charles Omenihu role. 49ers have a lot of options on the table. I have a cool video that I'm going to want to share with you when we get to the secondary that helps us update. So the 49ers have managed, and this is just a little bit of intel for you. There's going to be very low cap hits for the first couple years of the Brandon Aiyuk deal. I have confirmed that at this point. So the 49ers have structured the deal the way that I expected them to structure it. And this is just a little interjection into my 49ers roster analysis. And I will show you, well, here, we need to go back to our Brandon Aiyuk contract analysis, but I have some intel for you. Low cap hits over the next couple years. So this is what I wrote, and this is how the 49ers structure all their deals. So this is not a big surprise. This was back in April. I showed, the way that I structured this deal was I gave Brandon Aiyuk a hypothetical big signing bonus, gave him a massive guaranteed option bonus as well. Basically $50 million or so for Brandon Aiyuk over the course of the first 8 months. The 49ers will be paying Brandon Aiyuk $47 million over the course of the next 8 months. And they've probably done this through the signing bonus and the option bonus to keep the salary cap hits low early on. So the salary cap hits will be low. I'm estimating 8 million, 12 million, and 12 million. We'll see how close I am to being right. Just had to bring you that little news flash. Why don't we go back to the 49ers 90-man roster? Here it is. Where were we at? We are at Yetur Gross-Matos and the defensive linemen. But before I get to that, I had a couple of videos that I definitely wanted to share with you from today involving Talanoa Hufanga and Isaac Yiadom. So I'm getting this Hufanga video out. Have to send it to the computer. There it goes. And Isaac Yiadom, who's also back at practice. We can toss that out onto the screen as well. He was hitting the blocking sleds. It was a cool shot that I was able to get. There it is. All right. Both of those videos are going to be loaded up here in a second. But first, I want to talk about the 49ers linebacker room. Their defensive line is a big TBD for me as far as how well are these guys going to gel together. Obviously, a lot of small details that you want to pay attention to if you're the 49ers when it comes to the shading up front on the offensive line and the rotations that Chris Kocurek is going to have to run. It's a project to keep all the guys fresh, working cohesively against the runs. They could set up the pass rush. That's why I say that the defensive line is a big TBD, but we know that there's been a big overhaul of the defensive line. The linebacker position has to work without Dre Greenlaw to begin the season. But I think Devondre Campbell, to me, he hadn't been bad so far. I think he's been a solid player for San Francisco, stepping into that 2 role. I thought Curtis Robinson was extremely impressive over camp. The way that he was sniffing out some of those plays in the backfield, That was good stuff from the 49ers. Flanagan Foles is more of a special teams player that you use in a pinch at linebacker. And if you want real upside, you could go once he's healthy, you could go back to D Winters. But I just think that you need to remove some of the lower plays, some of the downside first. And then there's the project moving into the future, but he was good enough to make the team. And he's the kind of guy who loves to hit in Tatum Bethune out of Florida State. I wrote a lot about him this offseason. So now as we move to the defense and the defensive backfield, why don't we take a look at Isaac Yiadom? Back from his ankle injury. Isaac Yiadom, a big addition to this football team. Because last year you had the problem in the Super Bowl. They didn't want to play Ambry Thomas outside. So Diamaro Lenore had to be outside, which forced Logan Ryan into nickelback, something the 49ers won't have to do this year because Isaac Yiadom can take over the outside spot. Here's a good stat for you. Charvarius Ward led the league with 24 passes defended last year. Isaac Yiadom was at 14, ranked number 12, and he played only half a season for the Saints. It's a really nice stat for Isaac Yiadom, which means they're going to have a lot of confidence playing that guy on the outside. And then ultimately, maybe even Ronaldo Green takes a spot this year, the second-round draft pick. But Yiadom makes it such that the 49ers don't have to rush the rookie Ronaldo Green, Tatum Bethune's former teammate at Florida State. We also got a look today at the returning all-pro safety for the 49ers. You may have heard of him. His name is Talanoa Hufanga. There he is, middle of the screen. His jersey's rolled up, jogging toward us. Unlikely that he's going to play against the Jets. And if he does play, if he's active, then probably not a whole lot. But I would think that the 49ers probably take their time with Talanoa. Still, cool stuff that he's back out there on the practice field. They can work Hufanga back because they're much deeper than they were a couple years ago when they lost Jimmy Ward at the start of the season. And they had to sign to Sean Gibson Sr. They've got Tracy Walker, who used to play for the Lions, was with them for several straight years. Tracy Walker should be able to give the 49ers some call-up depth from the practice squad. They've got Jair Brown. They've got George Odom. You know who else they have is Malik Mustafa. I should play my Malik Mustafa interview. Talked to Malik in the locker room today. I'm actually going to cue that up while we're talking about the safety position. This might have gotten lost in the shuffle today. But talk to Malik about a lot of cool stuff. And Malik, he's going to play sooner rather than later. He's a good player. It's going to be really, really tough to keep Malik Mustafa off the field. But you can just see how robust this secondary is. And, I could go back to what I wrote today up on The Athletic. And this is based on a quote from Charvarius Ward. The returns of Talanoa Hufanga and Isaac Yiadom boost what the 49ers think could be the NFL's best secondary. Check this out. We're going to play the video with Malik Mustafa, our interview in the locker room. All right, Malik, so you have Dante Whitner on the schedule tonight to watch some tape. Oh, Ronnie Lott, I guess you met him a couple weeks ago, and it seems that, and this goes all the way back to when you were drafted, you talked about watching John Lynch tape. What is it about being able to watch some of these guys, Hall of Famers, great players in the past, that you try to take into your game?
Yeah, just legendary players at the end of the day. Maybe can't play exactly the same how they used to play just because of how football is in today's game with the rules and everything, but just the mindset and instincts, tenacity that they brought, I feel like just carrying that as a football player in itself is going to make you a better player. So definitely appreciate those legends, how they formed the game, how they represented, and, how can I, make that and form that into my game as well.
I thought one of the funnier lines I'd ever heard a rookie say after the draft was when you said you'd have to dust off some of the VCRs for John Lynch. Have you been able to dust off some of the VCRs, and what do you think about what you could take from his game or the way that he approached it mentally to apply it to yours?
Yeah, just being able to see the whole picture. I feel like, as a safety, he was the last line of defense, but being able to be the quarterback of the defense, and just being able to, know what's going on in front of you, guys in different spots, and how can you maybe pick up what the offense does before the play snaps, or get people aligned in order to play high, fundamentally sound defense and execute at a high level. Think that he was part of a defense that was able to have a long impact on the game of football, and how can I be that anchor, and how can we all be on a line on defense to execute at a high level.
You talk about John's ability to see the whole picture. It's only been a few months since you entered an NFL building, but now he's the GM, he's the boss, and part of his job, I guess, is to see the whole picture. Does that, fit with the duties of a safety? Can you see how he was able to move up from that position, seeing the whole picture on the field, to having to see the whole picture running an NFL building?
Oh yeah, definitely. A lot of moving parts, and he was already prepared. Just being able how he carries himself, and people trusting his vision, and I feel like 49ers trusting what he's got going on, and we've done a good job here, and we're just scratching the surface of what we can really become, and it's always nice to even see him at practice. He's behind all of us. He acts like he's the back safety sometimes. Just watching everything unfold. So I'm appreciative of him, trusting me, like coming into this organization, and it's just me, being able to do my part, and being able to, just get better every day.
Talanoa is back now. What have you been able to pick up from him now that he's actually at practice? I know he's probably not in team drills, but just him being out on the field, has that given you any added benefit over the past couple of days?
Oh yeah, definitely, because his communication is awesome. Just we only don't play sound football when we're not talking. The big thing is that being able to communicate at a high level is how we're able to fly around and make plays. And with him, he's always over talking. He's always talking about what we're doing, what the offense is doing, who's moving, how can it affect our defense, how can it affect our coverage, and being able to just be ready for what's to come. And he's been doing that since the OTAs. Him just chopping up ball with me, things like that. So me as a rookie, just taking that and that approach into the season is going to help us keep elevating and keep getting to that end goal and getting the 6th championship. So he just has that mentality every day.
Speaking of championships, finally, John said it was embarrassing that some guys didn't know who Ronnie Lott was, but obviously you knew who Ronnie Lott was.
Yeah.
Could you just take me back through the day when I guess he came to the facility and how you got to interact with him?
Yeah, I was just getting breakfast, and I ran into him, and then he wanted to introduce me to him, and as soon as I saw him, I knew instantly who he was. When we have our special teams meeting, there's a big portrait of Ronnie Lott sitting on the bench. So like as soon as I saw him, I was like, almost starstruck in a way. Just a legendary, NFL player, Hall of Fame, safety, 49ers and NFL. And it was just nice to just talk to somebody that's just seeing a lot, not just football, but just life in general. So it was definitely I was just appreciative of the opportunity, because, a lot of people don't get moments like that.
Every day when you walk out the... I'm going to cut myself off there. That was the last question, and we left the locker room at that point. But cool interview with Malik Mustafa. Could tell, just a mature rookie for the 49ers. And the end of our 53-man roster breakdown. Not a projection anymore, an actual breakdown. See who made that roster. They brought back Rocky Yassin into the fold. Darrell Luter Jr. made it. Obviously, Mustafa at the back end there. Talanoa Hufanga, he's back at practice. I could actually take off the injury shading for Talanoa Hufanga. I think that's fair. That's good. That was fun. Fun times on the show today, too. We can go back and recap, and then we can go. But the final verdict on the deal is going to come in the next couple days. I'm going to delve into the numbers in more detail and more accurately than anybody. So stay tuned for that. That will happen when we actually have the numbers. We do know that the cap hits early on are very low for Brandon Aiyuk, and based on the clues that we have, very likely a win-win. Aiyuk is generationally wealthy. The 49ers have found something that fits into their salary cap structure, so they can keep that as sustainable as possible. That's the key. You're going to have to pour one out for 49ers legend Amari Cooper and 49ers legend Cortland Sutton. Both of those guys were in trade talks between the 49ers and other teams, but neither of those two guys is going to be headed to San Francisco because Brandon Aiyuk, 4 years, 120 million, 72 million in total guarantees. We're going to get more detailed numbers later. Remember, it's the fully guaranteed money that really matters. And the reason that you could hit a win-win is because more guaranteed money, which is something the player wants, can also help the team because of the proration of signing bonuses. So cash-rich teams who are willing to spend, come out on top. The 49ers have more highly paid players than any other team in football because they're willing to spend, they're willing to stockpile these guys, and they're also able to procure these players either through the draft, through free agency, or through a trade. Next up is Trent Williams. We'll talk to you soon.